What have we been talking about? Moses. And where is Moses right now? Where did we leave him last week? He's in Egypt. Who is he talking to? Pharaoh. What's he saying to Pharaoh? Let my people go. We can remember this. And what's Pharaoh saying? No, no, no. He says, I do not know your God, neither will I let your people go. So far, there have been plagues come upon Egypt, and the point of the plagues is to show that the one true God is more powerful than the gods of Egypt. Right? Who remembers what the last plague is? The death of the firstborn son. So we need to talk about this. Last time, I asked, why do we think God is doing this? And Sophia, you said, it seems like God is angry. And I said, no, he's not angry, but I think that that's not quite right, because he is angry. God does not like what is happening. Now let's remember, why is Moses there in the first place? Why are the Egyptians in trouble? Because they have enslaved an entire people. They have killed the children to keep the Israelites weak. They have bound them in bondage and forced them to work. And we see throughout what comes next, God says, this is the problem. This is not okay. And it is because of this that God brings plagues upon the people of Egypt. Not only to show that their gods are weak, but to compel them to let his people go. Which means the basic problem here, is sin. What's sin? You don't know? Do you ever get in trouble? Do you ever disobey mom? When you get in trouble, that's sin. Okay? What do you do to make it right? Be good, and you kind of have to say you're sorry, right? That's important. Well, the Egyptians are not willing to say they're sorry. This is a problem. They're not willing to be good. This is a problem. And at the end, the only thing that finally forces Pharaoh to let them go is that the firstborn of every living thing in Egypt, not just the Egyptians, not just the people, even the animals, dies. That seems like that's a bad day, right? To say the least. Why the firstborn child? Says the secondborn child. I don't think that's true. Just to be clear. Where else do we see the firstborn child? Where do we see a firstborn child that has to die? Well, this is here. Where else do we see a firstborn child that has to die? He said the Pharaoh's child, which is fair. There we go. Who is Jesus? The firstborn, the only begotten of the Father. So we see, even in this story in Egypt, so far away from Jerusalem at the time of Jesus, in both time and place, we see God telling us something important. Sin is slavery. And to be free requires the death of a firstborn son. Because only Christ can save us. Right? So even there in Egypt, when they need to be delivered, the only thing that works is the death of the firstborn children. Now, do the Hebrew children die? They don't die. Why not? Who remembers this story? What do they have to do? That's right. And where do they get the blood of a lamb? It has to be a firstborn lamb, pure and perfect, and it has to be killed. They can't just give the lamb a cut on the foot and get some blood from this. This is important. It still requires death. And they put the blood over the lintel of the doors, and the angel of death passes by, and the Hebrews are safe. Now, what is that like? We put both vertically and across blood like the cross of the Lord. But I want to back away from that kind of thing and focus on something else. When we do the liturgy, do you know what we say? We say a lot of things, but what do we say about the sacrifice that we offer on the altar table? It is, but it's a strange phrase, and it doesn't make sense to us right now. We say, we offer you this sacrifice without the shedding of blood. So is there blood on our altar? No. That's important, because blood is shed now once for all, and our worship participates in this. In our worship, we receive Christ, who is the perfect Lamb, who wipes away all sin, who brings us out of slavery into freedom. But none of this would make sense at all without this strange and horrible story about the children of Israel in the land of Egypt as slaves, being freed by the hand of God through many plagues, and finally through the killing of the firstborn. The world is broken, and God brings his people out into freedom, but he shows us how these things work. So what does that mean for us? Does that mean that if you're the oldest child, who's the oldest? You're the oldest, I'm the oldest. Who else is the oldest? Okay? Feels a little bit, it's a nervous thing to talk about being the oldest child today. Does that mean we're in danger? No, younger children, because Christ has carried that penalty. That's important, okay? When we sin, what do we have to do, Miss Maria? When we sin, how do we make it right? We confess, yes, we say we're sorry, but above all, we put our trust in the Lord, who is the perfect Lamb of God, who brings us out of slavery and into freedom. This weird story about the Jews in Egypt and the firstborn son who dies and all of this is our life, except the death has happened once. So we don't need to worry about blood anymore, because God has made us free. Okay? So remember that. And when we receive communion, this is how we place ourselves under the blood, under the grace, under the love of the Lord, how we enter into communion with the perfect Lamb of God, who makes us free and brings us out of slavery and makes us holy.